Okay. Today is 5 May. We are here with Professor José Esteves from that is now a visiting professor here at PUC-PR. He'll gently attend our invite to talk about ESG. ESG is a very important and very recent, not actually recent in Brazil, it's not completely recent, but very important to you to know. And as I said previously, it's very connected with big corporations. Professor Esteves has a very interesting experience in this topic, and I think that he will share with us a lot of interesting insights that can help you in your future to work with organizations. Professor, feel free. I will open your file here, and then you can use the arrows to manage the slides. Feel free, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, once more, thank you for your gathering today. It is both an honor and I believe necessity to talk a little bit more the ESG framework in the business environment. But of course, we will be talking about the organizational
Professor, I think that we lost your contact. I think that it's better if you can put off your camera.
This is I will. As I was saying, we usually connect the dots of the ESG framework in the business organizations, but of course, we will be able to connect the dots with other types of organization, the public administration, philanthropy, NGOs, and etc. And so I decided to name this conversation in our lecturing talk today as Understanding ESG Organizational Framework in the Era of Knowledge Management and the Contemporary Competitive Strategies. Well, my name is José Esteves, and I am visiting professor in postdoctoral research and innovation for sustainable organizations here at PUC Paraná. I am also a member of some research networks that are connected with the sustainable development frameworks and the SDGs and etc. I was recently invited to be a member of the core steering committee member at STRIDES, that is a sustainability research network. And I was also an entrepreneur in the past 10 years and recently founded in the year 2018 Exponentialis, that was my intention to contribute with the learning education for change making or the education 4.0. I was also within the last 2 years founder of some initiatives like For Mentors. It's a business mentoring and entrepreneurship platform, and the Exponential Innova Hub, that's trying to connect a new workplace reality and help to discover new initiatives bringing together all these co-working spaces that we have during this pandemic time. Well, I'm also climate leader by the Climate Leader Reality Project here in Brazil. And well, this is me. And we will now enter the first part of our reflection today in this lecturing, that is to face that the future just arrived with a huge impact upon the global society. And I like to bring this image for those that are not able to see. I'm trying to represent a portrait of our planet Earth wearing a mask, just like probably the majority of the world is using in these days of COVID-19 pandemic. We used to say until a few moments in this decade that we are experiencing in the year is 2020, that the future was close and approaching in a very high velocity, and we suddenly were confronted with a global pandemic and the huge, let's say, sound impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic brought to our world and our societies, globally speaking. Of course, I will be able to speak a little bit more the Brazilian society because I belong to it, but all of you will be able to speak a little bit about your societies in the countries that you belong to. But we will definitely be affected with all the outputs of these inputs, ongoing inputs that we are still facing with the pandemic. The education classroom was impacted all around the globe. And right in the beginning, in the February 2020 of this pandemic, that was initially located in a city called Wuhan in China, we had some minor impacts. Then these impacts overflow to the entire education system around the globe. And according to UNESCO, we had around 1.2 billion students out of the classroom during this pandemic times. Let's move a little bit forward. As long as we can impute to a COVID-19 pandemic huge impact, these impacts just were responsible to boost a little bit the key external dimension that the world was experiencing back 2 years ago. If we keyframe back, and the year is 2019, we would be able to see and experience a lot of these external dimension, as I like to say, corresponding to, first, international social and political crisis, and then in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, what I like to say, uncooperative impact framework. Second, we were back there experiencing world economies in recession, depressed, or taking a slow recovery movement. And we have added the COVID-19, what I like to say, lower saving effects, and then we have experienced a disgrace in almost all GDPs around the world, and Brazil. This fall and this negative impact was around 5 to 6% of the total GDP that was initially previewed to the year 2020. Well, third, we have, and back at that time, according to ILO, an escalating unemployment rate, especially among youth people aged 16 to 24 years old. And we have added the COVID-19 hangover impact, as I like to say, by the month of May in 2020, we have cut off the total advance of the last decade in terms of employment advance. And fourth, the upcoming, as I like to say too, all at the same place, generation workplace profile, plus the COVID-19, where I like to say to digital experience, that is a conflict well represented by this picture that I'm presenting here in this lecturing. If you're not able to see, there is an old person wondering what to do with an open laptop, and a very small child wondering what to do with a typewriting machine. I was invited to some discussion forums, conferences, international seminars. I attended probably around 15 to 20 different ones in the last 2 years as a speaker. And I like the most to bring this image because it is the first time for the contemporary administration theories that we can have all these people that is once in a while represented by a specific contemporary theory gathering together in the same workplace. We are talking about the baby boomers, the X, the Y, the Z generations, the millennials, the digital native that are now forced to discover how they will have to better interact with their families in order to represent also as an alternative of earning to sustain the family in these pandemic times. Moving ahead, we have what I used to say is the sustainable development timeline that we experience getting back to the year 72, while we have meeting of global dimensions that decided to discuss and to put as priority the discussions about the environment and the sustainability and we have during this timeline some major representative global events too, until or up to the year 2012, where we experienced to have the Rio Plus 20 gathering of this global agenda, located again in Rio de Janeiro, after the first one in 92 that was called Rio 92. And from this, we have got the opportunity to evaluate the aspects that are involved to collaborate with the development of a new agenda and framework that will put us in the same stage that we face when we are discussing the ESG framework these days. From Estocolmo back in 72, like I just said, the emergency call to action that first with the industrial boost, with the accelerated urbanization, with the income upgrading, and with the, we call consumo desenfreado in Portuguese, but is a not conscient consumption. Up to Rio 2012, with the social participation in the building and implementation of the sustainability goals. This is the pre-phase of the SDGs, as we all know by these days. These are the guidelines, the pre-SDGs that were brought to these meetings in order to discuss this framework that would, and if this framework was acceptable to be discussed as a majority perspective, not only from the nations that were involved in these discussions, but also for their societies. We were addressing during this timeline questions about the poverty and the need to overcome poverty or the extreme poverty all around the globe. We are talking about food security. We are talking about employment. We are talking about the energy and sustainable energy. We are talking about the diversity and inclusion, the agenda of human rights, gender equality. We are talking about the money and the how to access money in a fast-changing world for those that do not get together all the conditions to have money with their initiatives, no matter if their initiatives are political, social, economic, etc. We have been talking about the innovation about products to harm less the art. We have been talking about a whole framework of the water management. And we have been also, of course, talking about the quality of life. When we have reached this point, I always remember or like to highlight our beloved Peter Druck's finest premises, like I used to say. And if we have a return trip back to the years 80s, we would see that Peter Drucker advanced, let's say, something about 30 years, the future, as we are experiencing now for business, corporation, for the entire contemporary organization. Drucker said that all institutions, including business organizations, are responsible for the quality of life. Drucker said that technological innovation will become the core of the management. Drucker said it's up to management to make knowledge more productive. Drucker said the administration will have to be considered both a science and a humanity, and the economic and social development results from management. Emblematic. So we reached the Sustainable Development Goals. This is the waiting room, just like we have here in the BB Collaborate platform, to experience everything that will be brought to this ESG framework that we are discussing nowadays. We have first to decode ESG, despite of the fact that everyone knows the meaning of each letter, E for environmental, S for social, and G for governance. We have to advance one step behind to understand the concept framework that brought us to the SDGs today in terms of education or business education, just as you prefer. That is the meaning of eco-business or eco-corporate pedagogy that equals a joint venture. I will talk about this joint venture of two concepts, that two integrated concepts in the next slide of this presentation, but I would like to fix one core object of this eco-corporate pedagogy, to refocus on the principles of sustainability, respect for the community and the environment. When we do this, we are able to understand that this joint venture will bring together to work in a cooperative manner. The first venture, that is education for sustainability, and the second venture, that is the quality of life. What does it mean? Develop a critical awareness, a commitment to offering an approach to environmental issues that interrelate social, ecological, economic, political, cultural, scientific, technological, and ethical aspects. Just as now, probably we all know, there is image that I really like, that is based in a concept known as KCS, Knowledge Centered Service, that will be much more like balancing environment, as we move forward in the direction to ESG, because we will be able to see in KCS this interconnection of the solve and the evolve in a more professional perspective. And there is also a knowledge management that does not depend on software, just like our SBGC, that is the Brazilian Knowledge Management Society. And with this image of one hand and 5 fingers, we will be able to represent it on a more than appropriate way. First, we have to pay attention to the lessons learned. Second, we have to make capillary our best practice with of course, with the understanding of a concept that they can be always improved. We have to foster and to upgrade our international communication, our end of communication. We will have to able to experience according to our business or corporation culture, and to address it on an appropriate way in order to be able to reach every single people that interact with the organization itself. Fourth, we have to foster, to boost the idea of live communities on site. It means we have to understand that communication is something so dynamic that it's also something that can be dangerous for the organization, because everything that happens inside the corporation can be used, if it's not a good thing, against the corporation itself. And of course, in these startups and new business era, we have to talk about the business mentoring. I have experienced the change making of being a professor in a business school and bring all this content to develop some kind of frameworks that can be applied to these ongoing strategies that have been placed in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems. And the reason why an organization in these days, and particularly in these days that we are living with an ongoing pandemic, the reason why they need business mentoring is because the business mentor has to be capable to make some forecasts with a overview of the ecosystem that probably an entrepreneur or an innovator will not be able to do on an appropriate basis, of course. We move ahead, and I realize that you have been talking about this a few weeks ago, so I will not enter in this subject, but I would like rather to make let's say approach of the big corporations and try to bring this to some kind of ESG connectivity. You probably learned that the System B is a global movement created in the United States. I doubt a little bit if it's true, but I do realize that the first notes that were noted took place within the United States business environment. And it's currently organized as a global network. And one of the milestones about the ESG is exactly the report of Future of Nature and Business that was published by the World Economic Forum. And System B works with a central question that probably you all know, and if you don't, let me present it in this way, very simplified. What is the main interest of the company? Generating value for the shareholder or generating value for stakeholders? If we move ahead a little bit, we will see that presently in Brazil, there are already 180 companies certified by the B system. And this B impact assessment supports the company's ongoing impact plan, which means there are companies that want to strengthen governance, create a dialogue with impact investors and ESG, and this requires comparable, verifiable, and credible metrics, of course. There is an image for those that cannot see an appropriate way that a person putting a dime or a coin inside a jar with living plants. And I will again ask you, what is the main interest of the company? Generating value for the shareholder or generating value for the stakeholders? Well, Natura, Brazilian company that can be found almost everywhere in the world, became the first publicly traded company in the world to be certified as a System B company. The merit of Natura began far behind the appearance of the concept of System B. But other publicly traded companies like Movida, that is a company related to auto rentals, and some others are already certified, and two more that are not certified already have just signed a commitment to their statutory bodies. One is Magazine Luiza, and the people with experience here in Brazil, some kind of advanced relationship of Magazine Luiza in our business environment with their inclusion, diversity, and entrepreneurial initiatives, and also Gerdau, that is a very huge company, also known worldwide. Well, these are, let's say, the butter of the cake, and we have finally arrived to the key ESG components. ESG means using environmental, social, and governance factors to evaluate companies and countries on how far advanced they are with the subject, the matter, the question of sustainability. There is also a framework that is known as CSR That means corporate social responsibility that was in the business radar, and also I used to say in the business sonar for years. But the difference is that CSR refers on a more appropriate way to softer qualitative and can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
And
now it's
ESG
okay.
and ESG. Okay, thank you. And ESG is the quantifiable measure of a company's sustainability and society impact using metrics that will matter to investors. This is what ESG will represent in terms of environmental and the social and the governance guidelines. When we talk about environmental guideline, you're talking about climate change strategy, biodiversity, water efficiency, carbon intensity, environmental management systems, etc. When we talk about the S guideline, we are talking about equal opportunities, freedom of association, health and safety, human rights, customer and products responsibility, child labor, etc. Even slavery in the labor ecosystem, that it's not so here in Brazil during this year 2021. And governance. Guidelines are business ethics, compliance, board independence, executive compensation, shareholder democracy, etc. Well, and this is coming to an end, and a sum up, a closing of our lecturing today. What I will try to develop as a part of my research in order to bring an ESG framework proposition, especially in this post-COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to highlight that I do not believe, as a researcher, an educator, in a post-pandemic world. I do really believe, especially with the knowledge about the COVID-19 viruses that we have today, that COVID-19 was brought to the world to stay, and we will have to learn to live with this. But as we are talking about new organizational approach, we will be able to put together some kind of adjust it and align it. What I meant to say, the 6 must-dos. This is not a baptism name, but I'm serious considering to think about this. the 6 must-dos. First, we have to reflect on our corporate and professional values. We have to understand the organization on a different way, under different prisms and perceptions that we have had up to the year 2020. Second, the second two, to evaluate the impacts of the organization in the dimension. What are the dimensions? Those three, or those living three that are, let's say, bringing together all the spices or the new spices that we have for this dish of the organizational development framework that will be served in this contemporary time. We need to evaluate the impacts of the organization in these dimensions. Third, we have to act proactively to redesign our space and corporate interactions. Sorry, the sound is missing here a little bit. We are no longer the same men and women that we were yesterday. So, as the organizations, because the organizations are the live representation of the working forces that belong to them. Fourth, to value the social responsibility practice, not only of your company, but of other companies too. Because we are talking about a framework that will be more valued according to the capacity that the organization has to interact with the others. And if this is true, we will have to keep our attention devoted not only to our core business, but also to those companies that we relate to. Fifth, to contribute as a connector, as I like to say, but we also said as an associate, to improve practices, products, and services. I like to use this picture because it means that we have advanced it, but there is a long way to go further. But we are experiencing, for example, a change in our corporate mindset, even in our real estate corporate mindset these days, that are pushing us gently. Sometimes it will be harder if we do not pay attention to this question on an appropriate basis, to things like bring some energy concepts in order to bring these energy concepts to our corporate dimension and make us more fair with the environment and with our business ecosystems. And six, of course, not so clear to lots of people, to stimulate and consider change, because we are experiencing change and transformation in a pace that we have never saw before. No matter if we recap the experiences that were brought to the contemporary business theories that we have these days. And we try to make a close relationship with the period of time where they have ruled the corporate world. I recap a very good book that I used to say probably you all have had in the past, that In the Search of Excellence, for Bob Waterman and Tom Peters, where they used to say that rather than a sign of advancement, the success is something that is not clear when we are talking about the post-Second War business organizations. And more from this book I will leave up to your curiosity. Well, ESG shall have such kind of something that we may say that is a dialogical approach. First, in one side, we have this pathway between an operational analysis and a strategic analysis, and all that is related to this pathway: analysis at the level of supply chain, analysis at the level of operation, analysis at the level of the process, etc., etc. We have, in the other side, our popular management theories that will put in a joint venture again, where I believe when we talk about ESG, we are talking about an endless new perspective of joint ventures, that these two will put ahead and open the mindset to understand a little bit the velocity of change that is necessary to the ongoing business corporations or any other organizational structure to interact with the ESG commitments that will be needed to enter in this fantastic and necessary post-COVID-19 framework of business and corporate development. I call it managing the managing the cockpit velocimeter. Well, and there is finally a bit of the research project that I am involved in developing here with my fellow colleagues under the supervision of my dearest Professor Ubiratan Tortato. I call it management, entrepreneurship, and the new ESG model in Brazil, aspects of the new sustainable business environment in the post-pandemic, its impact and applicability on social, economic, economic development, and corporate governance. Begins with the theoretical and legal presuppositions of a new sustainable entrepreneurial economy. This is a singular term that's being defined as a result of this understanding, because it was not found on a prior research described as it is here anywhere, as an important tool in conducting research relevant to the study of organizations, legal guidelines that support its existence, and its initiatives to undertake the subject within a sustainability framework. It starts with a theoretical foundation, core definition of business organization, both based on modernity and the contemporary conceptual body, of course, with the emphasis on the key existing representative authors. Some of them I have quoted and mentioned here, this lecturing today, just like Peter Drucker. The second part relies in the applicability of an ESG management model that will focus on sustainable innovation and social entrepreneurship, and incorporates a direct relationship with the environment, social and corporate governance, to present some important research themes, and that portray, or try to portray a little bit better, the economic, legal, and administrative reality of these organizations here in Brazil. And the conclusion will seek to reflect and highlight the value of the academic work that is associated with empirical research as an efficient way of seeking innovative solutions applied to triple helix organizations to provide solutions for the complex problems that are arising for a new sustainable entrepreneurial economy. Well, thank you very much for all your patience with these technology minor gaps and noises that we are always experiencing when we use these online and virtual meetings. And once again, thank you for being patient up to this moment in my presentation, and I will be at your entire disposal. These are my contacts. Please feel free to contact me, and we can move forward in very, let's say, good directions. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Tortato.
Thank you, Professor Esteves. I think that it was very interesting, and I think that it was important to connect these two main aspects that we are trying to put in order here. That is, well, ESG and B corporations, and other aspects that we are trying to discuss in this discipline that is completely dedicated to sustainability. And then I think that we have maybe 5-10 minutes for questions. Then, if anyone wants to put any questions here, please feel free, or you can do by microphone or by chat. Okay, no questions. I think that they understood everything. Yes, I suppose that. But obviously that we are discussing a lot of aspects here during this time, and I think that it was very interesting to reinforce a lot of aspects. But I think that something new is ESG. This is something that we'll have more opportunities, I suppose, to talk during the next year, probably, when maybe you have your research more developed, with more data to show. Not for them, but probably for other students in the next year. Okay, if you do not have more comments or more questions, I will have to say thank you, Professor Esteves, for staying here with us. Well, it was very important for us to reinforce a lot of contents here, and I think that your speech collaborate with this idea. Thank you again, and I hope to see you in another opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor Totachin, and everyone that was patient to stay here in this lecturing today. Thank you very much.
Okay, see you. And for the students, I think that now we can have a break. Yeah, maybe 15 minutes, and we can return at 3 p.m. Okay, see you at 3 p.m.